Howdy guys and girls, and welcome back to Moto Joshing. So it's almost a year, well it will be probably by the time this video comes out, so the 31st of October is when I passed my direct access test. So I thought this would probably be as good a time as any to give you my top tips. So in this video I'm going to go over the kind of theory test, CBT, how I did it, how I managed to. Obviously I'm not a professional, this is only simple advice that I would tell anyone as a friend. So first and foremost, you know, definitely have a look at yourself strongly before you decide if a motorbike is in your future. For one, you certainly have to have a bit of maturity. It is far too easy to get in trouble on such majestic steeds as these. Even 125s can get you in some hot water. So at the end of the day, have a good head on you before you begin. But once you've decided you are going to engage in the wonder that is motorcycling, what I'd advise you to do is obviously get a copy of the highway code and give it a perusal. Obviously, you know, if you haven't got any kind of road smarts or road experience, obviously if you're already been a car driver past your test, then it'll probably be a doddle. But again, even then, I would say if you haven't passed your test in a while, then it would be worthy of a refresher for you. So certainly, you know, learn the rules of the road, as it were. My next top tip is actually getting apps. So I use the AA phone app from memory, and I actually found it easy. So you kind of feel like you're playing a game, to be honest. So you kind of just run through the questions on the actual app itself. You can you know, have a crack at them. It'll tell you when you're wrong, and you can basically just work through all the questions. Then once you've worked through all the questions, you can then do the mock tests. And again, it'll tell you what you got wrong at the end. But I found the mock tests to be pretty much exactly the same as the actual test itself. I don't know if it's just because obviously I'm a bit of a geek and a gamer, and certainly down with my tech, that I've found it relatively simple. But again, it's entirely go to your own pace. Obviously learn the way you learn. Everyone's a bit different, so by all means, just my advice on that one. So the theory test itself, obviously lots of questions. If you've done the car one, there's only basically like an extra 60 or 70 questions, I can't remember the exact number, but you know, that are relating to motorbikes when they come up, and to be honest, they're easy to spot when they do come up. Normally there's motorcycle in the actual, you know, question itself. But apart from that, it's pretty much the same questions, and they are pretty much a doddle, so I didn't particularly find that difficult. The other thing that people do find tricky is hazard perception. So that's where they basically, almost like a video game, play you almost like you'd be watching on YouTube a video of someone driving about on their bike. And essentially you are to tap the screen or click the mouse at a point when you perceive that there is, you know, a threat, a danger, a hazard, and all it's doing is just assessing how quickly you react to things emerging. Obviously if you just keep tapping all the time, it'll tell you you've tapped too many times, so you actually have to pay attention and tap when appropriate. But again, you can get practice videos and stuff on the apps again, and generally just found it quite easy. I don't know, maybe it's because I'm used to playing computer games and things, but again, pretty simple stuff. So once you've got your theory out the way, then you need to book your CBT. So CBT is compulsory basic training. It's the test everyone has to go through, it's not really a test, it's more of an assessment, though you can fail it. Well, I don't think you can fail it as such, they just don't pass you, I believe is their way of explaining it. So yeah, once you've got, you know, you book your CBT, there'll normally be a local school that'll do that, and essentially they'll take you off to a kind of car park and teach you everything you need to know. So essentially they'll run through the actual controls on the bike, how to use them, and you know, all the basics really, as well as, you know, some mechanical information, as well, you know, things to check like oil, fluids, all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely a good overview. So further to that, they get you obviously on the bike, you know, learning clutch control and using the bike. Now, some people find this quite startlingly worrying, that, you know, that you can go from not being on a bike at all ever to riding a bike, and yeah, for some people that freaks them out a bit. So, but if you're not confident with the actual controls on the motorbike, then I would certainly recommend trying to get a friend that's got a pit bike or a off-road bike or a 125 or something relatively small and usable, and ask them to take you to a car park or a field or something, and get them to show you how the controls work, so you become comfortable with changing gears and clutch, and kind of just manual handling and that kind of stuff. It really does help speed along the process in your CBT if you have some knowledge of this stuff already, and you're, you know, fairly comfortable. So that's definitely a tip there. If you know someone who's got a 125 or other bike, then it's time to call in a favour. Normally bikers are more than happy to assist other bikers to getting on the road and becoming part of the club, as it were, so they're normally pretty cool about it. Bit of a shower here. So yeah, certainly try and do that if you're not comfortable, or if you think you're gonna, you know, panic about it, or that's something that's daunting you, and get a little bit of practice in beforehand. But essentially they'll run you through the basics of kind of doing U-turns and your actual making sure that you can do your, you know, observations and you know, signaling correctly. They'll basically use cones and things to mock up all sorts of you know, figure of eights, junctions, that kind of thing, and run you through many different things. Normally they also go into making sure that you're aware of how to use roundabouts and highway code and that kind of stuff. So that's my next tip, is if you haven't been a road user, you know, if you haven't been a car driver before, then certainly do a bit of research on roundabouts, what lanes to be in, that kind of stuff. That's not to say that's perfect, because you know, some roundabouts, certainly here in Aberdeen, have different lanes and things, but these will normally be marked for you, so just take it with a pinch of salt. But having a general idea on how to do roundabouts and you know, maneuver and things certainly helps. The other tip I'll give you is that with rear observations and looking in your mirrors, which you should be doing regularly, what I would say is it's not good enough to give it a glance. You'll probably notice that I don't really do that many rear observations, or noticeably, you know, massively change my head to look in the mirrors, purely because I've got eyes. I can see. I've also got these convex mirrors on the end of my mirrors, so it allows me to see the stuff behind me. I still do lifesaver checks before kind of, you know, major moves or whatever, but for the most part, you know, when I'm just scooting about the road, I can see everything around me anyway, so I don't need to do massive head turns or head bobs. So that one is definitely a habit. I'm not saying it's a good habit, it's just habit. I have that aside, you know, to pass your assessment, as it were, you need to be looking like you're looking, so you need to purposefully move your head to look in your mirrors, and you know, give them a couple of seconds, but obviously always be aware of what's going on around you, and in front of you before you start looking in your mirrors and doing shoulder checks and things. You know, what's in front of you is the primary concern for sure. So after that, they normally have a spot of lunch after they go over some highway code stuff, and then after that, if everything's going hunky-dory, which it normally is, then they'll have you out on the road. Now, I know this part obviously panics some people. I know people that this has panicked massively, that they just didn't feel they're in control of the vehicle, and that can obviously be disconcerting for the person. Now, what I will tell you is that they don't take you out into the middle of a dual carriageway and expect, or you know, into a busy town and expect you to do this stuff right off the bat. They will categorically take you to probably a housing estate, somewhere really quiet where you can practice some of these maneuvers, and they'll basically just get you to loop around. They'll have a radio on you so they can talk to you and guide you. Yeah, that's one of the things. So they'll take you around, they'll make sure you're safe, and make sure you're doing your observations. They'll pick you up on anything that you're not doing quite correctly. And in general, at any time, if you're not comfortable, you can just pull over and ask any questions you might have, or speak to your instructor. At the end of the day, it's all about you being comfortable. As long as that assessment goes well, then that's it. You would have passed your CBT. If they've assessed that you're safe, then that's it. You can now have a 125 in the UK and drive that on your own. You're not allowed to have passengers or go on motorways, but apart from that, you can drive your little 125 with your L plates, loser plates as I call them, on with no problems at all. And this is exactly how I started. I rode around on L plates for best part of 6 months before then moving on to doing my other tests. So further top tips, and what I'll tell you is obviously don't do your CBT in winter for a start. You won't be comfortable, it's cold, you won't have heated grips, because most schools don't put heated grips on bikes. I really wish more did. It stands to reason to me that you'd be an idiot not to, especially in Scotland, but there certainly wasn't any heated grips on my bikes, but I did mine in June. But I'm aware that, you know, people will try and do their CBTs all times a year. So certainly with that in mind, you know, pick the time of year you're going to do your test. But if you have to do it, then you're going to need probably better gloves than what they're giving you, for sure. And gear in mind, and when I was talking about being comfortable, if you don't have bike gear yourself and you go to your CBT, they're going to be giving you loaner gear. So this gear is basically gear that loads of other people have worn. They normally get it donated by other bikers or bike shops, or, you know, sometimes they actually buy it, but it's pretty rare that they actually do. So this bike gear stuff is going to be used. Stuff isn't going to quite fit properly. It might be a bit pongy as well, it might be a bit wet from the day before, it could be absolutely anything. So what I would say is, if you're going to be going serious about the bike and stuff, then certainly buy you know, some gloves, or you know, some of the kind of more finicky stuff. Like for me, boots and gloves are massively important. If you don't feel comfortable in your boots or your gloves, the jacket a little less so, and helmets are generally pretty okay, to be fair. Even if you are borrowing one, they're pretty easy and not too bad to deal with. So it could be a bit smatty with us about it. So being comfortable is key. Now, do everything with confidence. You know, even if you make mistakes, you need to stop, forget the mistake, and then progress on. Take everything in your own stride, at your own pace. You don't, you know, really get speeding tickets or into trouble for going too slow, and slow is safe. Just remember to keep your head up and look where you want to go. Don't focus on the markings on the ground. Always just keep your head up and look at where you actually want to go. And the bike we'll probably go there. It's something that's kind of inbuilt into us from riding mountain bikes and everything else, really. That if we look at where we want to go, we'll generally end up going there. Hence why being distracted is not good. But anyway, guys, that's my top tips for the CBT and the kind of theory test. And I'll do my next top tips for the Mod 1 and Mod 2. And catch you on the next one, guys. Ta-ta, bye-bye.